Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into a sermon that tackles a really complex and, let's be honest, often misunderstood topic, the theology of submission. We're going to break down what it means, where it applies, and the whole why behind it. So let's get right into it. The entire sermon really hinges on this one central question you see here. What does it really mean to surrender everything? Not just your actions, but your entire will, completely. To get at this idea, the sermon uses a specific Hindi term, adin hona. Now, this isn't just about doing what you're told, it's a total, complete yielding of your own will. The sermon puts it in these really simple, powerful terms. If the authority says stand, you stand. If it says sit, you sit. It's about absolute trust and alignment. Okay, so where exactly are you supposed to apply this principle? Well, the source material breaks it down into 5 very distinct areas of life, which gives us a really clear framework. Let's explore what those are. All right, here they are, the 5 authorities. It all starts with God, then moves to spiritual leaders, then to elders in your community, and then it extends out into the workplace with employers, and finally it touches on family and even societal structures. We're going to walk through each one. First up, the big one, the absolute foundation of it all, submission to God. The sermon presents this as the essential starting point. And as this verse from James suggests, this act of submission is actually framed as the source of your strength, the very thing that enables you to resist evil. The second sphere is all about submitting to spiritual leaders. The thinking here, which is pulled from the book of Hebrews, is that these leaders are like spiritual caretakers. They're watching over the well-being of the community, and they're held accountable to God for that job. And number 3, submission to elders. This is presented as a direct, practical way to practice humility, honoring the wisdom and the life experience of the older members of your community. The sermon links this right to the idea that God favors the humble over the proud. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because the concept moves outside the church walls and into everyday life. The fourth sphere is the workplace. The teaching is to submit to employers and managers. And get this, it says this applies not just to the kind and gentle bosses, but even to those who are harsh or difficult. And that brings us to the 5th and final sphere, which covers society and family. The sermon specifically talks about the submission of wives to husbands, framing it as an act of reverence for Christ. But it also mentions a bigger, general call for mutual submission among all believers. Okay, so I know what you're probably thinking. This brings up a huge question, right? A central paradox. If you're submitting in all these different areas of your life, are you really free? How can those two things possibly exist at the same time? Well, this slide right here perfectly lays out the sermon's answer. The argument goes like this. True freedom isn't about having no master at all. It's about choosing the right master. You're set free from being a slave to sin, and in that new freedom, you willingly choose to become a servant of Christ. It's a total transfer of your allegiance. So we've covered the how, but what about the why? I mean, what's the point of all this? The sermon doesn't just lay this out as a rule to be followed. It actually outlines 4 key spiritual benefits that are supposed to come from this practice. Yep, the pastor points to 4 very specific, positive outcomes and presents them as the direct result of living a life of submission. So let's break them down. First, it prepares you for good works. Second, it's a path to finding freedom from spiritual traps. Third, it keeps you connected to God, who's described as the ultimate source of life. And fourth, and this is a really big one, it's the main way to actually cultivate true humility. And that last point, humility, really brings us to the sermon's ultimate conclusion. More than anything else, submission is presented as a kind of spiritual discipline. It's a path designed for one main purpose, to develop humility. And the ultimate example given for this? Jesus himself. As this text from Hebrews points out, even though he was the Son of God, he learned obedience through what he suffered. And this is held up as the highest possible example of humility in action. So the crucial takeaway is this. According to the teaching, the goal isn't control just for the sake of control. The entire system of commands and submission is actually seen as a tool, a kind of divine mechanism designed to test the heart and forge genuine humility in a believer. And that leaves us with a final, much broader question to think about. As we've unpacked in this explainer, this theology presents submission as a path to humility and freedom. But it raises a really vital point that we can apply to any system of belief. Where do you draw the line between a structure that empowers people through humility and one that leads to harmful subjugation? That's a profound question and definitely one worth thinking about.